Cool. Okay, everyone. So our final presenter for this session, and we'll have a 30-minute break after that, is Jen Ringbauer from Faculty of Science and Engineering, and the topic is exploring common farm management attributes contributing to the building of family farm resilience in Australia. Take it away, Jen.
Thank you. I'm feeling like a Year 7 student in a Year 12 classroom. I'm only 4 months into my honours and am willing to hear any feedback about the PhD process, because that's what my next step is after this. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the peoples of the Ringbauer Nation, whose unceded lands we stand on today. I pay my respect to the elders past and present. I also acknowledge the peoples of the Wiradjuri Nation, whose unceded lands on which I'm usually standing. I pay my respect to their elders past and present. I extend my respects to all First Nations peoples here or online today. I also recognise the First Nations, the First Peoples of Australia as the country's first land stewards, knowledge holders and storytellers. Yinjamara is a word from Wiradjuri, which means go slowly and with respect. So that is the spirit with which I present my work today. This is the rationale for my research. Farmers are under a lot of pressure at the moment to keep the prices of their product really low. They're also trying to reduce their environmental impact and also enhance the ecology of their farmland. So they're being pushed in so many directions. The other difficulty they face is the unpredictable nature of weather due to climate change. So they're facing really big long-term farming decisions, not knowing or having an idea of any expectations that are coming up. So there's a few practices that are emerging to deal with this. And I'm particularly looking at why, what am I looking at? Yeah, it's unclear which of those strategies that farmers are using to deal with those pressures that might lead to more resilience in their farm system. So my research question is, what are common farmer attributes contributing to the building of farming resilience in Australia? This is my 8-month, was advertised as 1 year, but my 8-month project, a literature review to scope potential farm management attributes that influence farming resilience, an examination of survey data in order to identify practices contributing to resilience, and that data has been collected by my supervisor over the last 5 years. I'll go into that in a minute. An exploration of the relationships between identified farm management attributes and farm resilience. I'm going to go behind here so I don't have to keep looking behind. So to give you an idea of the context of the study, my supervisor has done 6 regional rural benchmarking social surveys across 6 different regions in Australia over the last 5 years, and has collected 2,700 survey results in an incredible amount of data and many questions asked. So I'm interrogating that data from my understanding of all of those questions that I've raised to come up with a framework to put that data through statistically and come up with some key attributes and practices that farmers are using to increase the resilience of their farm. The framework that I come up with, hopefully, will be able to be used in her next larger project, which is collecting data more particularly from cropping situations, which is the research in cropping in regenerative agriculture is not in existence at the moment. There's really not a lot out there as far as the social and ecological intersect there. So resilience, what is it? It has its origins in ecology, but some would say even further back in engineering. It's an indication of the predicted or actual length of time taken for an ecological system to return to its original state or function after a stress, shock or disturbance. This heuristic here is, or this model here is a model that's seen quite commonly in resilience literature, and it's the journey of a system, the nonlinear journey of a system after shock and developing into shock to increase the resilience of the system. That was developed by Gunderson in the early 2000s. So my working definition, there's a lot of debate about what resilience is, but my working definition is a system's capacity to buffer, absorb or adapt post-disturbance, stress or shock within a reasonable time to resume its defined purpose. So there's a difference between general and specific resilience, and I'm looking at more general resilience. Some literature looks at particular types of shocks and disturbances, like a long, slow burn of a drought, or for an example, a short shock would be a flood. So looking at particular types of shocks that they're being resilient to, their system is being resilient to. Resilience thinking is used across many disciplines and across various scales. So we can look at engineering to, individual health or the resilience of an individual person. And we can look globally, across the country, across regions, across institutions as well. There is a particular type of resilience thinking called socio-ecological systems resilience, known as SES, and that's what I'll refer to it today. And farming is so we've got the intersection of the social and the ecological here, and how they relate to each other to create or detract from resilience. Farming is a particular type of SES where the social and ecology relate and respond really closely to each other. So I'm looking at resilience principles as used in SESs in various areas, and the overarching principles seem to come from Stockholm, the Stockholm Resilience Institute, and the principles here are expressed by Biggs in 2012, and we have six different principles there summarised. Foster an understanding of social ecological systems as complex adaptive systems, which looks at an understanding of many connections and they are occurring concurrently. We have an understanding of accepting unpredictability and uncertainty, and we have the capacity to acknowledge multiple perspectives. Manage slow variables and feedbacks. We're looking at understanding long patterns and their ability to gain or reduce momentum. So for an example, in a farming system that is like a slow burn, increasing nutrients in a water supply that might cause damage downstream. For example, one theory of the Darling Barker River fish kills is that kind of slow burn and nutrient runoff from farms. There's an understanding to broaden participation. It's informed, broad and well-functioning groups lead to action. We promote polycentric governance systems with multi-stakeholder governance, balancing openness and making decisions in a tight structure. Maintain diversity and redundancy. We're looking at having many components and the relationships between the components. There's an ability to compensate the loss of any one or some components in the system. Encourage learning and experimentation, collaborative learning in a view to revise existing knowledge and to be inspired to learn, and to manage connectivity for multiple loose connections leading to quick recoveries. Farming resilience is not really looked into as a farm system in Australia, but in the EU, there's a lot of work there because they have strong policies that lead to farming resilience. So there's a lot of work coming out of the EU in this domain. One particular author who has been looking at this over the last decade and a half is Eike Dahnhofer from Austria. And I've chosen two of her papers that distinctly draw out those principles in five principles of flexibility, self-organisation and cross-scale linkage, experimentation and monitoring, knowledge and learning, and diversity. Now, to me, they don't address all of the Stockholm principles. And here I've got a Venn diagram of how they overlap and intersect. So in A, we've got a lot of the resilience principles that are in existence from the Stockholm literature. There's also a section of the Dannhofer principles that are outlying there, but also the farming resilience literature. There are some themes that are there that needed a bit of tweaking in my understanding to fit them into that section. But what I found was that there was a clear outlier from the Dannhofer principles how do you put that? The resilience principles were outside of the Dannhofer principles, and that was the managed slow variables and feedback. And once I acknowledged that, then all of the farming literature, farming resilience literature that I found fit neatly into that model. So then I came up with this wonderful emerging model, and it's yet to be approved 100% by my wonderful supervisors. We've got flexibility, self-organisation. Actually, what I'll do is I'll go through these one by one and just give you a few examples of what that might look like in a farming system. We've got flexibility. So we're looking at different scales then of on-farm flexibility and flexibility at a regional level to accept and allow for different products coming from a farm. So some farms you'll see a setup for growing cotton because there's a cotton gin down the road to process the cotton. But if they try to change what they're farming because they realise that that's detrimental to the ecology or the ecological systems around them, they might not be supported by the region in how to process or get their product to market. So we're looking at that. New capacities, which feeds into that, openness to change and adaptive practices. Self-organisation. We've got things like good livelihood and work-life balance. In the drought, I think that was really, in the drought of in the 2020s, that finished in the 2020s, was a lot of farmers who were absolutely tied to their farm because they had to feed their animals day to day, sometimes twice a day. So that work-life balance was really stressed. So in a more resilient and robust system, that there's less reliance on getting out and feeding the animals daily. For example, another example in self-organisation is increasing cohesion between social groups within and without the region, which also feeds into that processing and understanding, but with a social understanding. Knowledge, learning, experimentation and monitoring, valuing traditions, elders' wisdom, modern knowledge and local capacities, all quite equally. Farmer-led and grassroots networks, lifelong learning and institutions to support and enhance learning. Cooperation and co-learning with innovation and research. Manage slow variables and feedbacks. We've got things like embeddedness, purpose, place attachment, pride and meaning from the farmer. Balanced social structure and inclusivity. Quality of life in farming areas, employment opportunities, healthy humans, and I query well-being as well, and good working conditions. Connection and leadership. We've got close relationships with consumers. I don't know if you've heard of the bloke Matthew Evans, who's down in Tasmania, who really encourages people to know their farmer or only be 2 steps away from their farmer, and that's that paddock to plate kind of understanding that you actually know where your food's coming from. Integration of social and ecological variables, balanced and inclusive development. Diversity and redundancy, we've got biodiversity and both wild and managed areas, so unmanaged and managed areas, economic marketing and livelihood opportunities, and a diversity of farming and on-farm activities. A few questions that I've had answered for me in the last week that I had prepared for this presentation, but I've just been at a resilience conference for the last week, so I was able to just ask directly the academics who are writing in this area, which was really nice. I asked the question, where does personal resilience and wellbeing of the farmer sit in this framework? And every person I asked had a different answer. So I'm just at the, it actually doesn't matter stage. The other question I went into the conference with was where do resilient capacities fit in the emerging framework? That is that figure of 8 figure and the principles that I'm looking at. And the answer I often got was that that figure of 8 is actually to represent ecological systems, but as soon as you add that social element, it becomes too complex for that figure to be. So the principles are stronger in SES resilience literature. So where from here? I acknowledge that I have to really ignore the biophysical element of models that look into SES literature, because the surveys that I'm taking my data from is just self-reported. So it's just the perception of the farmer and how the health of their system is working. So there's an acknowledgement of the ecosystem processes there, but it's just how the farmer perceives their farm. And then I have to come up with a model, and this is how it's looking at the moment, to run the survey questions and the data that come from the surveys there. That was my summary. I'm going to skip over that. References, and that's how you contact me. So many thanks.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Did you say that's an honours project?
Yes.
Right.
I'm a little bit passionate about this.
You needed it for that sort of scope, but that is fantastic and really timely and relevant, I think.
Yeah.
So it's really good to have you here today.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Yes, Josh.
Hi, great. Thank you very much. I see a lot of flow charts, framework. Couple of years ago, we published a paper on agro ecosystems, digital farming technologies, using different tools and techniques, using design science approach that can handle both quantitative methods of interpretation. I think there's a lot of scope of doing a lot of modeling and implementing it. I'm not sure there is an element of implementation you discussed in this. You discussed mostly design and then how you articulate different ecosystems, connectivity and stuff like that. I think there is a lot of scope of doing attribute journey mapping among these ecosystems.
Could you repeat the
journey mapping?
Okay. Okay, thank you. I might catch up with you afterwards and get a bit more detail. Thank you.
Have any other questions? Oh, yes, Richard.
Use small words because I'm only an honours student.
It's obvious that the competency of honest students has gone up since I was an honest student, but I could not have delivered that presentation.
Yes. Oh, thank you.
I think it's taken a big breath now. This is not a trick question at all, but I was very interested in, you had a working definition. I don't know if that slide can come back up, but you're obviously talking about farming. Farming involves land. And so with respect to resilience, you said something about returning something or enabling something to be able to achieve its defined purpose.
Yep.
Do you mean a defined purpose of land? And if so, what's the defined purpose?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's something that's been bubbling away in the back of my mind the whole time, is if you define the purpose as a farm to produce food or fibre for the population, be that local or global, then you can just automatically have more resilience. But if you say I'm a farmer who farms cotton and that system then goes away, then you're not resilient. So it actually does depend very much on how you define the land.
So it's land use as opposed to land, really the ecological function.
I think so, yeah. Because, and I didn't touch on this due to time, but with Dannhofer, she actually separates the farm, the farmer and the farming. And I'm looking more at the farmer and the farming rather than the farm, just because it's a social benchmarking study. Yeah, yeah. And the GRDC project is actually looking at how to monitor these resilient systems, and it will lead into that monitoring aspect of the social, and we'll actually have all the geophysical or the biophysical information as separate parts of the project. Yeah.
You know Charles Massey? Charles Massey's book.
Yes, he was the start of my journey. Thank you.
All right, well, thanks everyone. I think that's our time to. So Jen, thanks for coming along and presenting that. I know we all wish you well on your honours journey, and I do hope to see you back here next year as a PhD candidate for sure.
Thank you. But if anyone wants to talk me out of it, please feel free to come and challenge me.